Brandon Anderson believed that stuffing the new teacher's locker with 47 live frogs would create hilarious content for his 50,000 TikTok followers. What he did not anticipate was Madison Carter calmly picking up her phone and uttering 5 words that would change everything, requesting immediate K-9 unit deployment. 30 seconds later, a 90-pound German Shepherd burst through the school doors like a guided missile, and Brandon's reign of chaos ended with him lying face down on the cafeteria floor in front of 300 recording students. Every teacher has encountered that moment when students assume they can intimidate just because the teacher is new. Often, it is the quiet ones who deliver the most unexpected reactions. If you have ever wondered what happens when someone pushes another person too far, this story reveals why underestimating others can be the gravest error of your life. This narrative stands for thousands of educators enduring harassment daily. Your support enables us to highlight these untold tales of bravery and justice. A soft morning mist hugged the Rocky Mountain foothills as Madison Carter pulled her silver Subaru into Riverside High School's faculty parking lot at 7:15 in the morning. At the age of 28, she radiated an understated confidence that comforted administrators while sparking curiosity among students. Her shoulder-length auburn hair was tied back in a practical bun. Her steel gray eyes seemed to observe every detail, and she wore those distinctive black tactical accessories. Boots that seemed surprisingly pricey for a first-year teacher's income caught attention. Riverside High extended over 12 acres in a wealthy Colorado suburb, like a symbol of both sports prowess and academic success. The 3-story brick building housed 2,000 students whose families valued hockey scholarships as much as prestigious university acceptances. Here, character development through competition was not merely a slogan on gymnasium banners, but a deeply ingrained principle shaping every facet of the school's environment. Madison Carter had arrived 3 weeks earlier under what Principal Richards tactfully described as emergency placement procedures. This followed what the district cautiously referred to as challenges in retaining teachers within the English faculty. While her qualifications were flawless, there was an unusual scarcity of personal information. Her emergency contact number was based in Colorado Springs and led to an automated line requesting federal clearance codes. The lease on her apartment had been co-signed by an organization called Educational Transition Services that existed only as a government post office box. At first, the student body received her with the practiced courtesy of youngsters conditioned to impress authority. But as Madison steadily declined to laugh at inappropriate remarks, dismissed sexual innuendos, and upheld professional limits that former female educators had slowly relinquished due to social pressure, rumors began to spread. Rumors spread through the corridors like a digital wildfire. Why did she always place herself carefully during conversations, leaning against walls with unobstructed views of the exits? What was the reason behind the military-grade laptop case she carried everywhere, adorned with government encryption labels? And why did her teaching resume include mentions of prior work with the Department of Defense, involving confidentiality agreements signed in federal offices? Most puzzling of all, students observed her Garmin tactical watch, the kind typically used by military operatives to coordinate missions. When inquisitive teens asked Madison about it, she would smile enigmatically and swiftly change the topic, leaving them more curious than ever about their mysterious new English instructor. Brandon Anderson had been observing Madison with mounting annoyance ever since her arrival. As Riverside High's star hockey player and student council president, Brandon ruled the social hierarchy. His athletic prowess, inherited wealth, and calculated charisma made him the type of person politicians spend years perfecting. His sandy hair remained impeccably styled, even after grueling twice-daily practices. His piercing blue eyes radiated the cold assurance of someone unchallenged by serious repercussions. Standing 6 feet and 4 inches tall, he moved across the campus as if every trophy displayed was personally earned. Brandon's father, Judge William Anderson, served on the Colorado, The State Court of Appeals held a role offering both legal protection and political clout throughout the educational district. His mother, Catherine Anderson, led the school board's disciplinary committee, which meant that Brandon Anderson's behavioral problems vanished into bureaucratic voids instead of jeopardizing his sports eligibility or college ambitions. Brandon's close circle showed his keen grasp of social power structures. Mason Turner, built like a linebacker, carried the sharp mindset of someone bound for Division I football scholarships. His family's construction business had exclusive maintenance deals with the entire school district, making his alliance both influential and politically significant. Tyler Richmond moved through the halls with the assuredness of inherited wealth. His father's tech company supplied all Riverside's computer equipment through suspiciously unopposed contracts. Jake Morrison, lean and anxious but politically savvy, acted as the group's digital strategist. His social media skills not only grew Brandon's enormous TikTok audience, but also documented their coordinated harassment of vulnerable individuals. Together, they formed Riverside's untouchable foursome, athletically indispensable to punish, too deeply connected to overlook, and too vital to the school's image to face real repercussions. They moved through the corridors with the easy confidence of those who believed their futures were secured, no matter their grades or how they treated others. Madison's professional demeanor unsettled their usual dynamics in ways they could not fully express but definitely sensed. Previous female instructors had either responded to their charm with flirtatious support or become flustered by their focus, eventually giving into pressure and requesting transfers to different schools. Madison chose neither path. She dealt with them using the same detached professionalism she applied to all students, refusing to participate in the social manipulations that had always worked before, while meticulously documenting every incident like someone preparing for a serious legal case. The morning everything escalated began. During the second period, advanced composition class at 9:15 a.m., Madison was outlining how to structure narratives when Brandon lifted his hand with exaggerated flair. His timing was clearly meant to disrupt the flow of the lesson and provide material for Jake's secret TikTok filming. With a tone dripping with false innocence masking an underlying provocation, he said, "Miss Carter, since you're new here, maybe you don't fully understand how things work in Colorado. We hold more traditional views on gender roles and respect for authority, so you might want to reconsider your expectations about student compliance." The atmosphere in the room instantly shifted as 28 students listened. The students immediately recognized the beginning of what Riverside diplomatically named teacher evaluation periods. Madison's pen kept moving steadily across her whiteboard, yet her stance shifted subtly, revealing training far beyond standard teacher preparation. Her weight distributed with precision, angles carefully chosen, and her situational awareness evidently heightened. Mason quickly caught his quarterback's signal with practiced timing. "Yes, some of our old teachers' new male students require a different approach, more flexible rules to accommodate natural teenage behavior." Tyler contributed, his nervous energy thinly veiling a calculated harshness. Jake's phone kept recording as he added live commentary for their social media followers. "New teacher thinks she can alter Riverside's culture using feminist authority methods," he remarked. Addison turned away from the whiteboard with gestures that appeared casual but positioned her smartly near exits and possible threats. Her response exuded a commanding presence more fitting a federal courtroom than a high school, each word deliberate and tracked for reasons none of them could foresee. "Mr. Anderson, I acknowledge your concern about my adaptation to local customs. However, federal education regulations override regional practices regarding suitable classroom conduct. I am well acquainted with both Title IX requirements and the repercussions for institutions that do not uphold compliance with federal civil rights laws." The mere mention of federal legislation lingered in the atmosphere like an unexploded bomb. None of them grasped the full significance, yet Madison's tone hinted at expertise far beyond ordinary teaching qualifications. Her tactical boots had walked through environments where errors cost far more than athletic scholarships. Moreover, her educational background featured training that civilian instructors rarely experienced. The aftermath of the second period, advanced composition class, should have marked a clear division between Madison and her most difficult students, but instead it sparked the beginning of a struggle that would challenge every belief about authority, gender, and accountability within the corridors of Riverside High School. Brandon viewed Madison's reference to federal law as a form of academic grandstanding, a last-ditch effort by someone who could not earn respect through traditional feminine deference to male power. He immediately began researching Madison's history right after class ended at 10:05 in the morning. Using his student government privileges to access administrative records, he uncovered unusual gaps and mentions of prior government roles that required security clearances. Brandon concluded, "She is likely just a faded government secretary pretending to be a teacher." During their lunch meeting in the athletic wing, he explained to his team that fancy terms related to federal law would intimidate high school boys. He declared, "It is time to show her how things truly operate when you are dealing with champions." Mason nodded in agreement as he examined the social media intelligence he had collected on their new target. Her online footprint was practically non-existent. No dating profiles, no party photos, no social connections at all. Either she was concealing something significant, or she was the most uninteresting person alive. Tyler offered his insight, drawing on the political savvy inherited from his father's years on the corporate board. He shared that his father believed the district had hired her quickly due to Mrs. Peterson's sudden resignation. She was likely desperate to hold on to her position, which meant she would avoid upsetting students whose families held influence within the community. Jake then pulled up his TikTok data, highlighting that their harassment videos were gaining widespread traction. The classroom clip already had 20,000 views, and their followers were demanding more intensity. They urged the team to humiliate her and teach the feminist a harsh lesson. What none of them realized, though, was that Madison's urgent job situation was actually a cover for a sophisticated federal investigation. This probe was about to reveal violations of Title IX that could lead to millions in lawsuit damages. Her paperwork was not just paperwork. Academic note-taking functioned as evidence gathering for a Department of Education civil rights lawsuit destined to transform educational policies across the country. Brandon's initial act of escalation unfolded during the Wednesday passing period at 11:45 a.m., when the bustling corridor assured the largest audience for his psychological intimidation strategy. As Madison approached the faculty workroom carrying her distinctive military-style laptop case, Brandon strategically placed himself in her path, with Mason and Tyler by his sides offering support, while Jake recorded the entire episode for dissemination on social media. "Miss Carter," Brandon called out with a feigned warmth that echoed through the busy hallway. "I was curious about your personal life. A single woman in a new town probably feels lonely. Perhaps you would welcome some advice about local social scenes." The question carried multiple layers of inappropriate suggestion intended to trap her in an impossible reply. Responding would confirm the personal nature of his inquiry, yet ignoring it might appear discourteous to the students nearby who lacked awareness of the harassment dynamics involved. Madison's reply completely defied Brandon's expectations. She halted her steps, faced him squarely, and addressed him with professional firmness that transformed this casual hallway confrontation into something akin to a formal interrogation. "Mr. Anderson, your interest in my personal relationships involving inappropriate student-teacher interactions violate district regulations and may also breach federal education laws. If you have questions concerning our academic curriculum, I am available during the posted office hours. However, please respect the necessary professional boundaries outside those times." Her voice held an authoritative tone that compelled even the toughest athletes to instinctively step aside. Yet Brandon's pride could not accept that a woman was asserting control over him in front of his peers. His face turned red with embarrassment, quickly shifting into resentment. "I was just trying to be friendly to the new teacher," he said loudly for nearby students to overhear. Maybe someone should tell you this is not a military camp where you can boss people around. This is Colorado, where men still behave like men. The confrontation drew more students' attention as they gathered between classes, their phones discreetly aimed to catch any dramatic developments. Madison noticed the phones recording not with worry, but with satisfaction. Her training had shown her that keeping a record could become a powerful asset when used wisely. "Thank you for clarifying regional gender expectations," Madison responded with icy professionalism. "I will make sure to include your remarks in my daily reports." The mention of daily reports evoked a sense of finality and seriousness in the atmosphere. A brief moment of doubt flickered across Brandon Anderson's usually self-assured demeanor. Most teachers would have reacted with threats of detention or referrals to Principal Richards. Madison Carter, however, spoke as if her reporting reached far beyond just the school's administration. Yet, no one truly understood how far her reports actually traveled. The following Friday marked another escalation in Brandon's behavior. At 12:30 in the afternoon during lunch, when supervision in the athletic wing was minimal, conditions became ripe for increased psychological intimidation. Madison was quietly grading papers in her classroom when Mason Turner appeared at her door with a seemingly elaborate question about missing assignments, drawing her into the hallway. There, Brandon and Tyler were waiting, phones in hand, ready to record. "Miss Carter," Brandon began with exaggerated concern, "some of us have been talking and we're worried about how you're adjusting. You always look so tense and stressed. Maybe you need someone to teach you how to relax, show you the charm of small-town hospitality." His voice carried subtle sexual implications that grew more vivid as he described, with unsettling detail, how experienced local men could introduce her to Colorado's traditional views on gender relationships. Mason and Tyler chuckled appreciatively while filming everything for future social media posts. Madison's reaction surprised them again. Instead of shock or shame, she listened with the focused calm of someone collecting evidence for her own purposes. Recording devices were capturing every detail with federal-level precision. "Gentlemen," she declared once Brandon concluded his speech, "sexual harassment of educational staff constitutes a federal offense under Title IX protections. Your recorded statements will be kept as evidence and sent to the relevant authorities for examination and possible legal action." The mere mention of prosecution caused the first fissure in their self-assurance, even though they had no idea that Madison's mentioned authorities included federal agents specializing in educational civil rights violations. Madison's background in teaching had equipped her with training that civilian educators typically lacked, and her records were directly contributing to a federal inquiry that would soon focus on Riverside High, investigating recurring Title IX breaches that had long been shielded by the administration. Monday morning brought a buzz of eager anticipation that seemed to electrify the corridors of Riverside High like distant thunder. Brandon's weekend had been completely absorbed by strategizing what he believed would be the crucial confrontation in his quest to assert control over Madison Carter. His social media following had become increasingly insistent on intensifying the conflict, and his group's weekend gatherings had revolved around detailed plans to put the new teacher firmly in her place by means that would unmistakably reinforce the gender power dynamics within Riverside High. The strategy Brandon revealed on Monday was, the preschool strategy meeting held in the athletic locker room displayed a complex grasp of psychological tactics, mingled with teenage disregard for legal ramifications. His goal was Madison's professional demeanor, which had always resisted verbal abuse and sexual intimidation. He assumed that physical embarrassment would finally break her spirit while generating social media material that would solidify his reputation as someone no outsider could confront. Brandon declared to his gathered team at 7:45 a.m., "Today, we show everyone what happens when some government official thinks she can come into our school and disrespect champions." He continued, "She wants to talk about federal law. Let us teach her a lesson in local justice. The frog scheme stemmed from Jake's investigation into Madison's supposed fears and weaknesses. Her background in government suggested a person used to authority and control, so creating disorder and inducing visceral disgust would maximize psychological damage while producing viral content for their online audiences. 47 live frogs in her locker streamed to my 50,000 followers, Brandon explained with a fierce eagerness. When she opens that door and starts yelling, we will have the viral moment that destroys her reputation forever. No educator bounces back after being seen as fragile and hysterical. Mason and Tyler exchanged looks that hinted at unease about going beyond mere verbal attacks, yet they remained silent. Their devotion to Brandon Anderson and fear of being socially ostracized outweighed their limited grasp of legal limits. Neither had the political savvy to understand that using biological agents against a federal contractor might be prosecuted as domestic terrorism under the national security laws established after September 11th. Madison Carter arrived at the school that morning with heightened vigilance, suggesting professional expertise in threat evaluation. Her tactical boots showed evidence of recent inspection. Her laptop bag was arranged for rapid retrieval, and her movements revealed a methodical awareness of possible ambush points. To ordinary onlookers, she looked perfectly normal, but to trained individuals, she appeared ready for confrontation. The first sign of an escalated danger appeared during third-period study hall at 10:30 a.m., when Tyler approached Madison's classroom with a lengthy excuse about requiring academic help. His anxious behavior and frequent glances toward the corridor implied coordination with hidden accomplices, yet Madison identified the ploy with clear professional insight. "Mr. Richmond," she said without raising her eyes from her grading, "if you have genuine academic questions, you may address them during my official office hours. Otherwise, please return to your designated study area." Tyler's complexion turned red from the sting of being dismissed so decisively, ruining his carefully planned distraction attempt. Feeling defeated by Madison's refusal to cooperate, he withdrew to the corridor where Brandon waited, growing more impatient by the minute. Their hushed conversation was clearly audible to Madison's trained ears. Tyler expressed his frustration, saying, "She is not convinced," and added, "It seems like she knows about our plans." Brandon answered with the tone of someone whose authority had been pushed beyond what he would tolerate. "Then we stop pretending and deal with this head-on. Championship week grabs everyone's focus on hockey anyway, so it is the perfect moment to teach a lesson about respect." The term Championship Week had a special meaning at Riverside High, since the entire community's identity revolved around athletic success and the informal immunity it granted star athletes. During game preparations, administrative scrutiny was loosened, faculty concentrated on player eligibility, and rules for student conduct became surprisingly lenient for those wearing Letterman jackets. Madison understood these dynamics better than anyone else because her federal training delved deeply into how institutional agendas could foster environments in which harassment thrived under official protection. She had been compiling a detailed file documenting exactly these types of patterns, though Brandon remained unaware of how meticulously his actions were being recorded for federal investigation. Their confrontation took place during lunch at 12:15, just as hallway traffic peaked. The moment had reached full intensity and the perfect conditions for viral social media content. Madison was walking toward the faculty workroom when she noticed her locker door slightly ajar, an unusual sight that immediately triggered every alert her military training had ingrained. As she approached cautiously, Brandon's team appeared from carefully planned positions, phones already recording. Their coordinated movements suggested deliberate planning rather than a random encounter, while the excited energy from nearby students showed that news of something important had rapidly circulated through Riverside's social networks. Brandon made sure to place himself prominently in the camera's view as Jake's phone captured everything in high quality for TikTok sharing. Well, if it isn't our favorite federal law expert," Brandon announced loudly, drawing the attention of several students nearby. "Still think you can scare Colorado boys with your government papers?" The atmosphere shifted as students recognized the tension building toward an event unlike any before, and recording devices popped out as fast as professional journalists catching breaking news. Madison observed the cameras without worry, her training reminding her that such documentation could prove essential evidence in federal cases. Brandon then boldly reached for Madison's locker handle, clearly intent on making his next move as he proclaimed, "Time for a reality check about who really runs this school." Reveal whatever surprise awaited inside, Madison calmly said, "Let's show everyone what happens to feminists who don't know their place." Her reaction was smooth, composed, and utterly powerful. However, before acting, she reached for her phone and uttered 5 words that would change everything by requesting immediate K-9 deployment. Those words hung in the air like a verbal bomb with the pin pulled. In the distance, the sound of sirens began to cut through the excitement of Riverside High's championship week, along with the unmistakable growl of a very large, very angry dog preparing to alter Brandon Anderson's world forever. The sirens grew louder, just as 47 live frogs jumped out of Madison's opened locker, creating the exact chaos Brandon had planned to impress his 50,000 TikTok followers. Students screamed and scattered as amphibians bounced across the linoleum floors, while Brandon's phone recorded what he thought would be Madison's ultimate disgrace. Her professional calm finally broken by biological chaos combined with social media exposure. Brandon declared to his recording device with the victorious tone of someone certain of total defeat, "This is what happens to government feminists who think they can control our school. Riverside boys do not bow down to uptight teachers with fancy federal jargon." Yet Madison's response shattered every expectation of who held the true power. The gender dynamics and consequences that had shaped Riverside High for many years suddenly shifted. Unlike previous female teachers who either screamed or ran away, she remained perfectly still, observing the frog-related chaos calmly. Her demeanor showed the clinical detachment of someone for whom biological hazards were just an ordinary Tuesday morning challenge, rather than a source of psychological trauma. At that moment, the main entrance doors burst open with military precision. Ranger, a 90-pound German shepherd, stormed through Riverside's hallways like a guided missile powered by 4 legs and backed by federal authority. Right behind him came Sergeant Patricia Chen from the Colorado Springs K-9 unit. Her tactical outfit and resolute manner instantly transformed what had seemed like a youthful prank into a situation akin to a national security incident. Madison Carter, a federal contractor, spoke through what the students now realized was a hidden microphone, not just a stylish accessory. "Multiple subjects are engaging in harassment of Department of Defense personnel, requesting immediate suspect containment," Madison announced firmly. The shift from victim to federal authority was so complete that students still recording had to watch their videos again just to believe what they were seeing. The once shy new teacher had become someone whose power extended far beyond routine classroom discipline, reaching into the realm of federal law enforcement, a reality too complex for the teenagers to fully grasp. Brandon Anderson's confident smile faded as Ranger's 120 pounds of muscle advanced. Intensive federal training honed entirely on him, with a predatory focus. The dog's stance was controlled, yet clearly aggressive ears, pricked forward, muscles tensed, teeth bared in a manner that reflected extensive combat experience instead of ordinary school security. Mason faltered, bewildered, his linebacker confidence collapsing as he grasped the seriousness of confronting someone with apparent military ties. This is far from typical school discipline. Tyler retreated from their unconscious leader, overwhelmed by the dawning realization that their calculated bullying had just transformed into evidence for a potential federal investigation. "She cannot really be a teacher, can she?" Madison's reply carried undeniable authority as she kept her gaze locked on possible dangers while directing her backup team. Special Contractor Madison Carter, Department of Defense K-9 Training Division, cooperating with the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. You gentlemen are now subject to federal scrutiny for the systematic harassment of government personnel. The words federal scrutiny reverberated through the assembled crowd like a seismic wave, instantly shifting teenage social conflicts into a matter destined for national headlines within hours. Students who once found amusement in torment suddenly realized they had been witnessing federal offenses capable of ruining lives, careers, and families. The Reputations Rangers' takedown displayed a flawless mastery of controlled force, showcasing the kind of accuracy that could only come from years of military experience in restraining aggressive individuals without inflicting lasting harm. The German Shepherd moved with a smooth, agile precision more fitting for special operations than the bustling corridors of a high school. Using Brandon Anderson's own momentum and fear, the dog guided him face first onto the linoleum floor while keeping total control through well-applied pressure and strategic positioning. "Please do not hurt me," Brandon whispered, barely audible under the weight of 90 pounds of federal authority holding him down with practiced professionalism. "I was just joking around. This is only high school business." Sergeant Chen approached the scene exuding the calm confidence of someone accustomed to far more critical situations than spoiled teens with trendy social media profiles. "Mr. Anderson, harassment of federal contractors constitutes several breaches of domestic security laws, especially when such actions occur through social media networks crossing state jurisdictions," Sergeant Chen explained firmly. The revelation that Madison Carter's position had actually been a federal cover for a civil rights investigation hit the gathered students like a second explosive shockwave. It turned out the school's chronic teacher shortage was no accident, but a calculated effort to reveal ongoing systemic harassment that school leadership had concealed for years. Moreover, every encounter involving Madison had been carefully recorded with intentions beyond anything the students could have ever imagined. Principal Richards soon arrived, accompanied by campus security, his expression serious and commanding. Brandon Anderson experienced a whirlwind of confusion, horror, and a growing awareness of his own legal responsibility as he absorbed the situation. Federal jurisdiction took precedence over local authority, and his long-cultivated reputation for administrative control was about to be compromised as collateral damage in a civil rights lawsuit that could transform educational policies across the country. "This is inconceivable," Principal Richards protested every week as additional federal agents entered through several entrances with tactical precision. "We performed thorough background checks on all staff members. There is no way a federal contractor could have been placed here without our knowledge," Sergeant Chen replied with the confidence of someone whose investigation had been developing for several months, not just minutes. Principal Richards learned that the institution had been subject to federal surveillance due to systematic Title IX violations following numerous anonymous complaints about harassment and cover-up attempts. Madison Carter's assignment had been authorized by a federal warrant grounded in evidence of institutional discrimination and failure to report federal offenses. While paramedics evaluated Brandon for injuries and agents documented the harassment scene, the full extent of Operation Educational Accountability began to unfold during carefully managed briefings with media representatives who had arrived with astonishing speed for what was supposed to be an ordinary school incident. Madison's investigation uncovered a disturbing pattern where male athletes were routinely shielded by the institution from allegations of sexual misconduct. Harassment against female employees involved a coordinated campaign of intimidation aimed at forcing them to quit, alongside administrative policies that breached federal education laws through intentional neglect of gender-based violence. The tactical boots that seemed like unusual fashion choices were actually standard gear for someone whose past roles demanded constant attention to personal safety. The frog incident was not typical adolescent misconduct, but rather a form of biological warfare targeting a federal contractor engaged in an authorized civil rights investigation. Brandon Anderson's live stream provided clear proof of calculated harassment intended to obstruct federal law enforcement efforts, turning ordinary school bullying into charges of domestic terrorism, punishable by decades rather than mere suspension. Jake's TikTok account was promptly suspended while federal agents secured all footage as evidence for prosecution. His 50,000 followers witnessed the exact moment when male privilege collided with federal authority and was decisively challenged. The explosive content they sought was indeed released, but far from what anyone expected. "I was only following Brandon," Jake insisted in desperation during his first interview with Agent Williams. Initially, officials assumed she was just another substitute incapable of fitting into the Riverside environment. No one had informed them she was an operative for the government, Agent Williams replied, showed complete intolerance for any institutional support of harassment. Mr. Morrison's systematic mistreatment does not become lawful simply because administrators neglect to implement federal regulations. Your documented involvement in biological warfare against federal employees will face prosecution to the fullest extent of our legal reach, and the federal powers backing Madison's assignment began to surface as investigators exposed how deeply the conspiracy of silence had penetrated every tier of Riverside's school system. Her records were not typical academic notes, but rather evidence collection for a Department of Education case, destined to be the largest civil rights enforcement effort in Colorado's educational history. Mason Turner suffered severe repercussions as his family's exposure to federal probe became. His father's construction company held exclusive maintenance contracts with the school district, totaling $300,000 annually. Contracts that seemed to be secured due to athletic achievements instead of competitive bidding procedures. Mason explained to federal agents with urgency, "We never believed we were committing actual crimes. Everyone said it was just normal high school conduct. The administration never intervened, so we assumed it was permitted." Tyler, the Anderson family, soon realized that political power held no weight when confronted with federal civil rights allegations. The father's technology contracts with the district were unveiled as proof of deep-rooted corruption that facilitated harassment through economic manipulation. Meanwhile, the mother's role on the school board added further dimensions of accountability for systemic discrimination. Riverside High School's shift from a school proud of its championships to a federal crime investigation site happened with alarming speed, hinting at extensive planning behind Madison Carter's covert operation. Within 2 hours of the Rangers' arrival, the campus was flooded with federal agents, Department of Education officials, and journalists responding to reports of a Title IX enforcement action involving biological warfare against a government contractor. Faculty members were left stunned as they learned their workplace had long been under federal scrutiny for ongoing civil rights abuses. Several female teachers stepped forward with accounts of harassment that had been intentionally overlooked, revealing an entrenched pattern of institutional discrimination sheltered by the administration for over 10 years. Jennifer Walsh, a former math teacher, shared in her recorded interview with federal investigators, "I tried to report what was happening to me, but Principal Richards said boys will be boys and implied that I might be happier otherwise." In another district, Madison's bravery in keeping her disguise while recording everything has given a voice to all those of us who had been silenced. The community's reaction revealed profound cultural conflicts between the tradition of sports and the enforcement of federal civil rights laws. Parents whose children's chances for college depended on hockey performance found themselves defending a system that had long shielded harassment under the guise of championship success, while others demanded responsibility for years of institutional neglect. Local news initially framed the event as federal officials going too far in response to teenage mischief, but nationwide attention soon turned to the deeply rooted pattern of harassment uncovered through Madison's investigation spanning several months. The hashtag tactical teacher became a symbol for educators sharing their personal experiences with workplace harassment, while the hashtag Riverside accountability gained worldwide popularity as proof of systematic discrimination came to light. Students who observed Madison's dealings with federal power began to question the gender roles they had previously seen as normal parts of school life. Female students felt empowered watching a woman with genuine authority stand up to their tormentors, while male students realized their actions were subject to serious federal consequences well beyond local school rules. Seeing Madison Carter summon official military support showed clearly that misconduct would no longer be tolerated. Brandon showed me that women should not have to accept harassment as the price of education, explained Junior Sarah Martinez during her interview with Department of Education investigators. For the first time, I felt like someone with real authority was protecting us instead of shielding the boys who harmed us. The athletic program was immediately suspended as federal investigators looked into whether violations of Title IX had created systematic advantages for teams whose members escaped punishment for misconduct. College recruiters withdrew scholarship offers as players' harassment actions became public through federal court documents. Meanwhile, the NC Bullies launched its own inquiry into recruiting practices that had ignored documented histories of harassment. Brandon's sentencing hearing attracted worldwide attention as prosecutors revealed the extent of harassment networks that had operated with institutional protection at schools throughout the Rocky Mountain region. Medical evidence of his psychological trauma from the ranger's professional takedown was presented as exhibits showing the justified use of force when federal contractors face biological warfare attacks. Mr. Anderson declared federal judge Patricia Yamamoto during sentencing, "Your biological warfare attack against a federal contractor represents the culmination of systematic harassment that violated the civil rights of countless female students and the staff members responsible for documenting these offenses not only put individual victims at risk, but also compromised the core safety of the entire educational community." Brandon Anderson was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, along with mandatory enrollment in gender violence rehabilitation programs. This punishment surprised his former teammates but underscored the seriousness of the federal civil rights charges, which were intensified by acts resembling biological warfare against government personnel. His hockey scholarships were permanently canceled, and his followers on social media witnessed the complete collapse of privilege that was once maintained through systematic harassment of women. The investigation's nationwide significance became clear as educational institutions around the world began scrutinizing their own harassment issues. After extensive media attention on Operation Educational Accountability, the United Nations highlighted Madison Carter's case as a benchmark for fighting institutional gender bias on a global scale. Meanwhile, the Department of Education introduced the Carter Protocol, demanding strict procedures for investigating educational organizations that habitually ignored harassment complaints. Universities across the United States launched audits of their athletic departments after uncovering that new recruits from affected Colorado schools had concealed histories of harassment protected by former administrators. In response, the NCLA established enhanced background screening rules that specifically focus on gender-based violence cases, while several other organizations followed suit. Division I programs lost their accreditation due to recruiting athletes with documented histories of harassment. Riverside High School experienced a full administrative overhaul as federal oversight replaced the prejudiced leadership that had allowed harassment by deliberately ignoring Title IX requirements. The new administration introduced thorough gender violence prevention training, independent federal monitoring systems, and zero-tolerance policies for harassment, no matter the athlete's status or family connections. Madison Carter advanced her federal career by training other contractors in undercover operations aimed at combating educational discrimination. Her achievements at Riverside set new benchmarks for enforcing civil rights in institutional settings. Madison's story motivated thousands of harassment survivors to come forward, confident they were protected by federal laws and institutional accountability that earlier generations never had. The documentary, Tactical Teacher: The Riverside Investigation, debuted at the Sundance Film Festival and received awards for exploring how the athletic environment fosters systemic harassment. The film included interviews with Madison and other federal contractors working undercover in schools, leading to increased funding for civil rights enforcement and legislative changes that reinforced federal oversight of educational institutions. Years later, new teachers entering the profession continue to benefit from these advancements. Those working in hostile educational settings receive specialized guidance based on Madison's techniques. learning how to document harassment while staying composed professionally until federal support arrives. Her influence continues through every inquiry that safeguards vulnerable students and staff, proving that sometimes the strongest defense against systemic abuse is the silent courage of someone who refuses to remain quiet. The corridor, where Brandon planned to shame a fragile female educator, has now become a tribute to bravery, marked by a bronze plaque honoring all who confront harassment with resilience, dignity, and unwavering dedication to justice. The tactical boots did more than just crush one bully's confidence. They dismantled an entire oppressive system that would no longer convey silence for weakness. As federal agents led Brandon and his team away in handcuffs, Madison knelt beside Ranger to acknowledge her partner's flawless completion of the assignment. The German shepherd's tail wagged in proud contentment, ready to face the next challenge in their relentless battle against institutional prejudice. The teacher they once tried to break using 47 frogs has become the federal agent who dismantled their entire harassment network. Justice sometimes comes wearing tactical boots, accompanied by a loyal canine companion whose devotion goes beyond the call of duty. Local politics can extend into areas usually controlled by the federal government, where victims turn into champions through just 5 simple words. Calling for immediate canine support. Edison's story demonstrates that the strongest actions often originate from the most surprising places. Have you ever seen someone receive exactly what they deserved? Share your experience in the comments, as it may encourage others who are encountering similar difficulties. Every single voice plays a vital role in building safer environments, since those who remain silent often hold the most powerful truths, and misjudging their resilience is the greatest error bullies make.